I just want to do God's will.
On the night of April 3rd, Dr. King addressed 2,000 of his followers and alluded to death threats that he'd received. But he said, I've been to the mountaintop. I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm just going to do God's will.
And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you.
Dr. King's unconcern caught up to him on the very next day. It was April 5th, and King and his lieutenants met at the Lorraine Motel in a rundown part of Memphis.
Across the way, in number 422.5 South Main Street, in a semi-flop house, was James Earl Ray, an ex-convict and a drifter.
He'd checked in earlier in the afternoon under the name John Willard and had locked himself in a communal bathroom that overlooked the Lorraine Motel. He attached a telescope sight to a pump-action, high-powered rifle. At 6 p.m., King emerged onto the balcony of his room to talk to the Reverend Jesse Jackson in the courtyard below. He asked that "Precious Lord, Take My Hand" be played at the night's rally.
At about 6:02, that man steadied himself in the bathtub, opened the window, steadied a .30-06 rifle, and when Martin Luther King came out onto the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, about 205 feet away, pulled the trigger and put a salt point bullet through the neck and spinal cord of Dr. King.
Suddenly, Dr. King clutched his throat. A bullet had pierced his throat and his spinal cord, and he sank to the balcony. His tie had been ripped off by the force of the blast. Martin Luther King only lived for another hour. He died at 7:05 p.m.
In the immediate wake of the assassination, the cities explode. Some 100 cities, I think, erupted in violence. I remember that I was in the Library of Congress on the 5th floor, and as I looked out the window, I saw puffs of smoke rising over the city. It was an incredible sight.
The funeral for Martin Luther King was massive, with 250,000 people attending. His coffin rode in a rude farm wagon pulled by 2 mules.
There were representatives from all forms of government, except the white population of Memphis, where business was conducted as usual. James Earl Ray, Martin Luther King's assassin, had already escaped. He left a neatly wrapped package next door in the doorway of an amusement arcade, and in it was the gun, a nail clipper, a radio with his prison ID on it, and his fingerprints all over everything.
Ray was a lifelong petty criminal and not very good at his trade. This first son of poor parents spent more time in jail than out of it.
It would take months before James Earl Ray was captured. And in that interim, he traveled extensively with various passports and under various aliases.
Ray flew to London from Canada, from there to Lisbon, and later back to London. He was finally arrested as he boarded a Brussels-bound jet at Heathrow Airport.
James Earl Ray was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility ever of parole, and he is today in a maximum security prison.
Of all the American assassins, James Earl Ray seems to be the only one who was paid. How did he get all that money to travel all those distances? And most of all, how did a petty thief become the assassin of a major world figure?
In the minds of many, the answer was simple: easy money and vicious people to pay it.